Welcome, dear listener, to a tale carried by the tides and whispered by the ancient sea. Tonight, we journey deep into the blue, where myths breathe with the rhythm of waves. The ocean has always held secrets, stories that shimmer like pearls in the silent depths. Among them lies the legend of Poseidon, the mighty god of the sea, storms, and endless waters. He is more than thunderous waves and rolling tempests. He is the guardian of balance. And at the heart of his power rests a creation of wonder, the Chariot of Waves. Forged by the hands of sea nymphs, guided by the will of the divine, it gleams with magic. This chariot does not conquer. It guides, it carries, it teaches the strength of harmony. Tonight, we will follow its rise from the hidden palace of coral and light. We will see it crest the surface, drawn by horses born of foam and silver spray. We will listen to the whispers of sailors who once glimpsed its shining form. So, let the waves cradle you as we begin. The sea is waiting, and its story calls. The sea is never silent, though it often seems still to those who stand upon the shore. Even in calm, the water hums with a rhythm older than memory, older than stone. Waves breathe in and out, a heartbeat echoing through salt and wind. Long before stories were written, sailors listened, and they swore the sea was alive. They heard voices hidden in the foam, whispers curling through the crashing surf. Some said it was the song of nymphs, playful and bright, calling from beneath the tide. Others claimed it was the murmur of spirits, ancient and endless, watching with unseen eyes. The ocean, vast and unyielding, became both mother and mystery to humankind. Its voice carried promise, but also warning, gentle yet powerful in every swell. On moonlit nights, the waves spoke more clearly, as if the silver beams unlocked a secret tongue. The fishermen of old told their children to listen closely, for the sea never lies. It could lull them with sweetness, or remind them of dangers hidden far below. Each whisper was a story, a fragment of a myth carried on drifting foam. And within those stories, one name rose above all others: Poseidon. To the ancients, he was not a figure carved in stone or told in tales alone. He was the living presence that stirred the tides and ruled the restless deep. When storms raged, they felt his anger. But when waters calmed, they knew his grace. Yet even the calmest wave bore his voice, layered in tone like a song eternal. The whispers spoke of treasures lost, of cities swallowed, of journeys guided by unseen hands. Children would fall asleep to the lull of waves, believing Poseidon watched them dream. Fishermen would press their ears to conch shells, hearing echoes of a distant palace. Merchants sailing across wide seas whispered prayers into the wind, hoping he would listen. And often, when the waters shimmered in strange light, they believed he had answered. Legends grew, passed, from lips cracked by salt and carried from port to port. No parchment could capture the sound, for it lived in the ear, not in the eye. The whisper of the ocean was a promise that God still walked beside mortals. A sailor, alone at dusk, might hear a gentle murmur weaving through the surf. Perhaps it spoke of safety, guiding him home with the glow of stars. Perhaps it warned of reefs, reminding him to steer clear of the hidden edge. Whatever it told, he believed, for no man doubted the truth of the sea. And in those whispers, Poseidon's presence was felt, not feared, but revered. His name rolled with the waves, each crest a syllable, each trough a breath. The ocean itself became his messenger, carrying his voice without end or rest. Sailors said that if you closed your eyes, you could almost hear a chariot. Its wheels turned not on earth, but on foam, drawn by creatures of myth. the sound was faint, woven into the hush between one wave and the next. A shimmering, distant rhythm, like hooves galloping across a liquid plain. Few could truly claim to have seen it, but many swore they had heard it. For the sea does not shout. It whispers, subtle and steady, like a secret friend. The whisper of the ocean taught mortals humility, wonder, and reverence. It reminded them they were guests, not masters, of this vast and living realm. Each tide that rose and fell carried with it the pulse of divinity. And so the myth of Poseidon and his chariot was born not in sight, but in sound. It drifted with gulls, swelled with tides, and settled deep in human hearts. Even now, if you pause by the shore, you may hear it too. Not loud, not clear, but steady, eternal, and waiting for you to listen. The story of the Chariot of Waves begins in the dawn of ages, when gods and seas still whispered as one. The ocean was restless, shifting between calm and fury, seeking a form that could hold its eternal rhythm. Poseidon, lord of the deep, desired not only dominion, but also harmony with the tides he ruled. He sought a vessel, not of conquest, but of balance, a gift to unite gods, seas, and mortals alike. It was then that the sea nymphs, daughters of foam and song, gathered to weave their magic. They were artisans of grace, shaping currents as easily as mortals shape clay upon the shore. Their voices rose in chorus, and each note bent the waters, crafting lines of shimmering beauty. The frame of the chariot was born from coral, glowing as though touched by a secret flame. Pearls gleamed across its edges, reflecting light like stars scattered upon midnight waters. Every shell carried whispers of the deep, pressed into curves that would hold the chariot firm. Yet beauty alone was not enough, for the sea demanded strength as well as wonder. From the forges of Hephaestus, the divine smith, came wheels wrought from bronze and silver tide. They did not rust nor falter, but gleamed eternal, turning smooth upon the ocean's breath. Each spoke, held the mark of gods, engraved with runes that whispered of power and peace. Horses of foam, born from spray, were called forth to stand beside this work of art. These were hippocamps, creatures both wild and noble, half horse and half sea-born dream. Their manes flowed like rivers, and their eyes shone bright with the secrets of the abyss. To them was given the task of pulling the chariot, guided by Poseidon's hand alone. The sea nymphs blessed each creature with endurance, so they could gallop upon the waves forever. The chariot itself shimmered, not as a weapon, but as a vessel of balance and divine will. Its wheels turned even upon foam, gliding across the surface as though water were firm. The gods looked upon this creation and marveled, for it was both art and symbol of order. It carried not destruction, but the promise of guidance, a beacon amid the restless sea. Poseidon accepted this gift with solemnity, knowing it bound him to a deeper duty. He placed his hand upon its frame, and the waters stilled, recognizing their master's bond. The ocean itself seemed to bow, rolling back its fury to honor what had been formed. From that day forth, the Chariot of Waves became a legend, whispered in ports and palaces. Sailors believed it was the bridge between mortal journeys and divine protection. Priests declared it a sign that the sea had chosen not only to test, but to guide. Every pearl, every shell, every line of coral told a story of unity, not conquest. The hippocamps pawed at the tides, eager as if aware of their destiny beside the god. Poseidon smiled, for in their strength he saw the heart of both storm and calm. He knew that this chariot was no mere tool, but an eternal bond with the living sea. Through it, he could ride the horizon, guiding ships, calming storms, teaching respect. The birth of this gift marked not just a moment in myth, but a vow across all ages. The sea, vast and unknowable, now had a voice, shaped in bronze, pearl, and divine song. And though mortals could not touch it, they felt its presence in every safe return to shore. The Chariot of Waves became both legend and lullaby, echoing with the pulse of the ocean. Even now, when the tide rolls high, some claim to see its shimmer upon the crest. It is not a vision of conquest, but of harmony, reminding all who listen of the gift's birth. The story of the Chariot of Waves begins in the dawn of ages, when gods and seas still whispered as one. The ocean was restless, shifting between calm and fury, seeking a form that could hold its eternal rhythm. Poseidon, lord of the deep, desired not only dominion, but also harmony with the tides he ruled. He sought a vessel, not of conquest, but of balance, a gift to unite gods, seas, and mortals alike. It was then that the sea nymphs, daughters of foam and song, gathered to weave their magic. They were artisans of grace, shaping currents as easily as mortals shape clay upon the shore. Their voices rose in chorus, and each note bent the waters, crafting lines of shimmering beauty. The frame of the chariot was born from coral, glowing as though touched by a secret flame. Pearls gleamed across its edges, reflecting light like stars scattered upon midnight waters. Every shell carried whispers of the deep, pressed into curves that would hold the chariot firm. Yet beauty alone was not enough, for the sea demanded strength as well as wonder. From the forges of Hephaestus, the divine smith, came wheels wrought from bronze and silver tide. They did not rust nor falter, but gleamed eternal, turning smooth upon the ocean's breath. Each spoke held the mark of gods, engraved with runes that whispered of power and peace. Horses of foam, born from spray, were called forth to stand beside this work of art. These were hippocamps, creatures both wild and noble, half horse and half sea-born dream. Their manes flowed like rivers, and their eyes shone bright with the secrets of the abyss. To them was given the task of pulling the chariot, guided by Poseidon's hand alone. The sea nymphs blessed each creature with endurance, so they could gallop upon the waves forever. The chariot itself shimmered, not as a weapon, but as a vessel of balance and divine will. Its wheels turned even upon foam, gliding across the surface as though water were firm. The gods looked upon this creation and marveled, for it was both art and symbol of order. It carried not destruction, but the promise of guidance, a beacon amid the restless sea. Poseidon accepted this gift with solemnity, knowing it bound him to a deeper duty. He placed his hand upon its frame, and the waters stilled, recognizing their master's bond. The ocean itself seemed to bow, rolling back its fury to honor what had been formed. From that day forth, the Chariot of Waves became a legend, whispered in ports and palaces. Sailors believed it was the bridge between mortal journeys and divine protection. Priests declared it a sign that the sea had chosen not only to test, but to guide. Every pearl, every shell, every line of coral told a story of unity, not conquest. The hippocamps pawed at the tides, eager, as if aware of their destiny beside the god. Poseidon smiled, for in their strength he saw the heart of both storm and calm. He knew that this chariot was no mere tool, but an eternal bond with the living sea. Through it, he could ride the horizon, guiding ships, calming storms, teaching respect. The birth of this gift marked not just a moment in myth, but a vow across all ages. The sea, vast and unknowable, now had a voice, shaped in bronze, pearl, and divine song. And though mortals could not touch it, they felt its presence in every safe return to shore. The Chariot of Waves became both legend and lullaby, echoing with the pulse of the ocean. Even now, when the tide rolls high, some claim to see its shimmer upon the crest. It is not a vision of conquest, but of harmony, reminding all who listen of the gift's birth. The sea has moods, gentle at dawn, fierce at dusk, always shifting with the pull of the unseen moon. Sailors knew these moods well, for their lives depended on reading the language of the water. But there were times when the sea changed, not with the wind, but with something greater. The deep itself stirred, as if a voice long hidden was calling across the miles of tide. In those moments, silence would fall, and even gulls dared not cry above the waves. Fish vanished into shadows, and ships seemed small against the vast, waiting horizon. It was then that mortals whispered of Poseidon's gaze, turning from below to the world above. For the god of the sea did not rest in his coral halls forever. He listened. He listened to the balance of the ocean, to the harmony between mortals and water. And when that harmony faltered, when men forgot respect and sought only to take, he felt it. The deep grew restless, currents twining like serpents, waves rising in strange, unbroken rhythm. The ocean's voice, once soft, became urgent, as though summoning its master from the abyss. In the darkness of the trenches, Poseidon opened his eyes, and the sea obeyed. The coral towers of his palace shivered as if in anticipation of what was to come. Hippocamps stirred in their stables of light, manes flowing as though touched by invisible winds. The nymphs paused their songs, sensing the shift, their voices fading into watchful silence. For all the sea felt it, the calling of the deep, a command woven into its bones. Poseidon rose, his trident shimmering, not with wrath, but with the weight of duty. He knew the ocean was not only his kingdom, but also his responsibility to guard. Mortals had begun to forget that the sea was alive, not merely a path to riches. Ships cut without care, nets tore without mercy, and offerings grew fewer upon the shore. The deep whispered these truths, and Poseidon could not ignore them any longer. He turned to the Chariot of Waves, resting in shadow, gleaming faintly with eternal light. Its wheels shimmered as though already in motion, awaiting the god's command to rise. The hippocamps pawed at the floor of the sea, eager to leap into endless foam. The ocean swelled, waves rolling higher, as if preparing to carry their master aloft. Mortals upon distant coasts felt the change without knowing, shivering though skies were clear. They looked to the horizon and saw it darken, as if shadow had kissed the sun. The deep had spoken, and Poseidon had heard, a call as old as creation itself. It was not anger alone, but sorrow that stirred the sea god to rise. For every wave forgotten, every prayer unsaid, weighed heavy upon his immortal heart. And so he answered, not with thunder yet, but with the promise of presence. The calling of the deep was a summons, not of vengeance, but of remembrance, to remind mortals that they walked upon shores borrowed from the eternal ocean. The sea did not belong to them. They belonged to it, guests upon its restless edge. Poseidon knew his chariot would soon break the surface, gleaming like dawn across the foam. The waters whispered faster, urgency swelling like a song too strong to be contained. Every current bent toward him, guiding, urging, pleading for his hand upon the reins. The calling grew louder, filling the deep with resonance that even mortals might feel. And above, the horizon waited, ready for the god of the sea to appear once more. The ocean had spoken, and Poseidon would answer, carried by the Chariot of Waves. The sea answered Poseidon's call with movement, a rising and falling rhythm that spread across every shore. Currents stirred in places untouched for centuries, weaving together like threads of an endless tapestry. The deep bent its ear to the voice of its master, and all the waters shifted in reverence. From coral caves came dolphins, leaping joyfully, sensing the call that pulled at their hearts. Schools of fish glittered like scattered stars, gathering in patterns shaped by unseen hands. Seals slid from their rocky homes, diving gracefully into swells that carried them farther out. Whales sang their low songs, deep and haunting, echoing through canyons hidden beneath the waves. Each note joined the ocean's chorus, as though the world itself sang in Poseidon's honor. Farther below, in realms of silence, shadows stirred, and creatures of myth awoke. The hippocamps, steeds of foam and silver, pawed at the current, eager to rise. Their manes rippled like rivers, their hooves striking sparks of light upon liquid ground. They were born for this moment, bound to the chariot by divine promise and eternal bond. Naiads, the nymphs of streams, lifted their voices, sending ribbons of song across the water. Their melody wound through the sea, weaving harmony into the gathering tide. The sound spread from river to river, each answering like children calling back to a parent. Even the smallest brook seemed to quicken, hurrying its flow toward the waiting ocean. Storm clouds began to gather, not in fury, but as veils for something sacred to come. Lightning flickered, distant yet gentle, as though bowing to the power rising from the deep. The waves built higher, but with rhythm, rolling not in chaos, but in measured grace. Ships upon the water rose and fell, their crews whispering prayers into the wind. Some sailors swore they saw shadows beneath, vast shapes gliding like guardians unseen. Others claimed they heard hooves, faint and distant, pounding across the body of the sea. The gathering of tides was not merely a shift in water, but a summons of life. Every creature that called the ocean home felt it, responded to it, obeyed it. The chariot gleamed where it rested, light curling along its frame like dawn upon waves. Pearls and shells glowed brighter, awakened by the chorus rising in the currents. The hippocamps reared, sending arcs of foam into the dark, eyes blazing with expectation. Poseidon stepped forward, his presence alone bending the waters into still reverence. The sea nymphs bowed their heads, their songs softening into a hush of devotion. The ocean gathered itself, every swell, every ripple, every stream, flowing toward one purpose. It was not anger that drove this rising, but the ancient law of balance. When mortals forgot, the sea remembered, and when silence fell, the sea spoke. This gathering was the voice of memory, calling the god to rise with his gift. Above the surface, coastal villages felt the pull, though they knew not its source. Children looked out at the sea and felt their hearts quicken with awe and fear. Elders whispered of legends, of times when the waves themselves rose to greet their master. They spoke of the chariot, pulled by steeds that shimmered like dawn across the tide. And though they could not see it yet, the ocean told them the moment was near. The tide pressed higher upon every shore, urging all who lived to pause and listen. For the sea was not simply water, but the breath of a god who would rise. The gathering of tides was the herald, the prelude to a vision mortals rarely beheld. And in that gathering, harmony returned, as all of ocean life bent toward one will. Poseidon reached for the reins, the hippocamps surged, and the waves themselves bowed in weight. The sea shimmered as Poseidon's hand brushed the reins, and the chariot stirred from its slumber. Light unfurled across its surface, like moonbeams captured within polished pearl and shining coral. The wheels, half submerged, turned slowly, sending ripples outward like rings of eternity. Each spoke glittered with gems of the sea, glowing softly, as though alive with memory. The hippocamps neighed, their voices deep and wild, carrying through the water like thunder. Foam rose around their hooves, and their bodies shimmered with scales of silver-blue fire. The air above the sea trembled, though no storm broke. Only anticipation filled the sky. Every creature, from smallest crab to greatest whale, paused to witness the awakening. The chariot itself seemed to breathe, drawing power from the endless heart of the ocean. Pearls embedded in its frame pulsed like stars, each beat syncing with Poseidon's will. It was no mere vessel, but a living symbol, bound to God and sea in eternal pact. Legends whispered that it was forged at the dawn, when waters first kissed the earth. Born of foam and fire, shaped by tides and time, it carried more than beauty, it carried truth. Poseidon's hand tightened on the reins, and the hippocamps bowed, awaiting command. Their muscles tensed, their eyes blazed, and the ocean leaned forward like an eager listener. Then came a sound, low and vast, not of earth or sky, but of the deep itself. The ocean groaned with awakening, and waves lifted as though in salute to their master. Sailors far off clutched their decks, staring at horizons that seemed to glow from within. Some fell silent in awe, while others whispered prayers to gods they barely knew. The chariot rose higher, lifted not by storm, but by the harmony of the waters. Its wheels no longer touched the surface, but spun upon currents shaped of pure power. Light cascaded around it, arcs of brilliance dancing across the skin of the sea. Dolphins leapt beside it, weaving through foam as though escorting a king to his throne. The chariot's frame sang softly, a sound like crystal struck by wind and tide. It was a song of origin, a memory echoing through time, calling all to listen. Naiads clasped hands, their voices joining, weaving their hymn into the rising chorus. Even the rivers answered, their rushing waters quickening as if eager to join the sea. The hippocamps surged, their hooves striking sparks of light upon invisible pathways. They no longer swam, but galloped, the ocean itself hardening beneath their stride. Every leap carried them forward, each bound stirring the waters into radiant arcs. The chariot blazed like dawn, yet softer, a promise of wonder rather than fear. Poseidon stood tall, his figure radiant, his crown glimmering with spray and sunlight. He raised his hand, and the ocean hushed, waiting for the command that would follow. No voice was needed, for the bond between God and chariot was beyond words. With a nod, the hippocamps leapt, and the chariot cut across the surface of the sea. It moved with grace and thunder, a paradox of strength and serenity intertwined. Ships rocked in its wake, not in danger, but in awe of the miracle unfolding. Children on distant shores pointed, their eyes wide at the sight of shimmering light. The elders knew, their whispers carrying the old truth. Poseidon had risen with his gift. The awakening of the chariot was no mere display of power, but a sign. It was the sea reminding the world that harmony still flowed beneath the noise of men. And as the chariot soared upon the waves, every heart that heard its song remembered. The sea was alive, and with Poseidon's hand upon the reins, it would speak again. The chariot surged forward, and the sea opened in shimmering paths beneath its wheels of light. The hippocamps galloped with power, each stride sending arcs of foam high into the air. Their hooves struck invisible currents, forging a road across the endless blue horizon. Poseidon held the reins, steady and sure, guiding his steeds with unspoken command. The ocean sang in rhythm, each wave rising and falling to match the chariot's pace. Dolphins leapt beside it, weaving in joyous arcs as though escorting their king. Whales followed in the distance, their songs blending into the hymn of the sea. Above, gulls circled, their wings flashing white, mirroring the silver glow below. Every creature seemed drawn to the journey, as though the chariot carried destiny itself. Villages along the coast saw only glimmers, like sunlight dancing far upon the water. Yet hearts quickened, for though they saw little, they felt the power moving across the sea. Fishermen paused in their boats, oars resting as they whispered prayers into the wind. The chariot's brilliance touched them, leaving awe in its wake, a blessing upon their voyage. Seafarers told each other stories, convinced they had glimpsed the god among the waves. Some spoke of light wheels spinning across the horizon, others of horses made of foam. And though their words differed, all agreed. Poseidon had risen, and the sea rejoiced. The hippocamps thundered on, eyes alight with fire, manes flowing like rivers of silver. Each bound carried them farther, faster, across the surface where no ship could follow. The waters bent willingly, parting before their stride and closing gently behind. Not destruction, but harmony followed, a perfect balance between God and sea. The chariot gleamed brighter, wheels spinning with sparks that resembled stars. Its light was soft yet unyielding, carrying warmth instead of fear into the world. Poseidon stood tall, his presence commanding yet calm, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He sought not conquest, but remembrance, a union between mortals and the sea. For every tide told a story, and each wave carried memory older than the earth. The journey across the waves was a song, written by the ocean and sung by its god. Naiads surfaced, trailing their hands across the water, adding their voices to the hymn. Their laughter mingled with the wind, weaving joy into the chariot's passage. From rivers and springs far inland, whispers flowed outward, answering the call. Even distant mountains seemed to echo, their streams rushing faster toward the sea. The hippocamps slowed not, their strides fueled by an endless energy drawn from tide and wind. Every leap sent showers of light across the ocean, reflections that danced like fireflies. Sailors watched in reverence, their hearts filled with wonder and a quiet peace. Some believed they saw omens, while others knew only that beauty itself had passed by. The journey was more than travel. It was renewal, a reminder of the sea's eternal voice. For as long as the chariot rode, the ocean sang, and harmony touched the world. The waves did not rage, nor did storms break, for peace was written in their motion. It was not silence, but music. The sound of balance carried on every swell. Poseidon's crown glimmered with droplets of spray, catching the sun like fire upon gold. His chariot moved like dawn itself, spreading light and promise across the endless water. And those who watched, near or far, carried the memory into their hearts like treasure. The journey across the waves became legend even as it unfolded, etched in mortal soul. And the sea itself whispered the truth, that its master rode again, and it remembered. The chariot glided across the waves until the sea unveiled a cluster of hidden isles. They rose from the water like emerald crowns, draped in mist and ancient silence. Each isle seemed untouched by time, its shores glittering with shells older than kingdoms. The air was thick with fragrance, a blend of salt, blossoms, and memory itself. Legends called them the Isles of Memory, where the sea stored the stories of ages. Every tide carried whispers here, every wave delivered fragments of forgotten songs. Poseidon slowed his steeds, their hooves striking softer upon currents that gleamed like glass. The hippocamps snorted, manes flowing, yet they bowed as if honoring sacred ground. The chariot's glow dimmed slightly, not in weakness, but in reverence to the place. The god gazed upon the isles, his eyes reflecting centuries of hidden remembrance. Here, mortals were said to dream of lives long past, touched by echoes of the deep. Seafarers who drifted near spoke of visions, of voices guiding them across storm and night. The isles were not maps upon charts, but shifting, veiled in tides and divine will. Only those chosen by the sea found them, and fewer still lived to tell the tale. Poseidon stepped down from the chariot, the waves parting gently beneath his stride. The sand beneath his feet shimmered, glowing faintly like starlight scattered on shore. Naiads emerged, their forms woven of water, their eyes carrying sorrow and song. They bowed before him, voices rising, telling of memories kept safe in endless flow. Each word was a fragment of time, woven into the ocean's eternal fabric of being. Whispers spoke of sailors lost, of loves left waiting, of kingdoms swallowed by tide. Yet there were also songs of joy, of laughter echoing through harbors long forgotten. The isles of memory held not only sorrow, but the fullness of life carried by the sea. Poseidon listened, his expression solemn, for he knew the burden of remembrance. The sea could never forget, for it carried the truth of all that touched its waters. Every joy, every sorrow, every secret was written in its depths, eternal and unyielding. The hippocamps pawed at the shallows, restless yet subdued, sensing the weight of this place. The chariot gleamed softly, reflecting the tales whispered by unseen voices in the air. Children's laughter echoed faintly, blending with the cry of gulls circling above. It was as if the isles breathed, each stone and tree alive with memory. Poseidon raised his hand, and the sea stilled, allowing silence to hold dominion. In that stillness, the voices grew clearer, weaving into a hymn of remembrance. It was not mournful, but vast, carrying both sorrow and beauty in perfect balance. He closed his eyes, letting the tide of memory wash over him like a sacred stream. Visions bloomed, sailors reaching new worlds, lovers reunited upon the shore, children's first steps in sand. The gods saw not only grief, but hope, resilience, and the courage of mortal hearts. The isles of memory reminded him why the sea gave and took, held, and released. It was not cruelty, but balance. The eternal rhythm of tides, both kind and stern. The naiads sang softly, their voices blending into waves that lapped against the sand. Poseidon opened his eyes, the weight of countless ages resting quietly in his gaze. The chariot awaited, glowing brighter as if to lift the burden of the stories heard. The hippocamps pawed once more, eager to continue, yet bound by reverence still. Poseidon returned to his seat, his hand brushing the reins with renewed purpose. The isles faded behind him, veiled once more by mists, hidden from unworthy eyes. But their memory remained, etched in the ocean, carried by every tide to come. The sea had spoken, and Poseidon bore its truth as he journeyed onward. For the isles of memory were not an end, but a reminder of what must endure. And with the chariot's rise, the waves lifted again, carrying him toward destiny. The chariot pressed onward, leaving the isles of memory veiled once more behind a curtain of mist. The sea deepened, its colors darkening into hues of sapphire and shadow as the path unfolded. Here lay the whispering depths, a realm known only in stories carried by sailors and dreamers. The waves quieted, and even the winds softened, as if afraid to disturb the silence below. Beneath the surface stretched vast canyons, carved by time, older than mountains above the land. Legends claimed voices drifted upward here, echoes of truths long hidden within the abyss. The hippocamps slowed, their hooves striking softer, as though treading on sacred ground. The chariot dimmed, its glow muted by the weight of unseen eyes watching from the deep. Poseidon stood tall, his gaze fixed forward, though his heart felt the gravity of this place. The ocean seemed to breathe differently here, its pulse steady, but wrapped in solemn rhythm. Whales swam cautiously at the edge of shadows, their songs hushed into whispers of reverence. Dolphins leapt no longer, their joy subdued by the aura of mystery surrounding the depths. The sea itself seemed to murmur, a chorus of voices woven into the current and tide. Each whisper carried a fragment of story, secrets forgotten by mortals but guarded by water. Some spoke of lost cities, their towers hidden beneath coral and darkness eternal. Others told of treasures not of gold, but of wisdom locked within caverns unseen. Poseidon tightened his grip on the reins, for he knew this place carried truth eternal. The hippocamps' eyes glimmered faintly, catching flashes of light deep within the canyons. Yet those lights were not flames, but the glow of creatures dwelling in eternal night. Strange forms stirred below, some vast as mountains, others delicate as drifting lace. They moved with grace, untouched by time, guardians of secrets never to reach the surface. The whispers grew clearer, rising like a tide, pressing against the ears of the world. Poseidon closed his eyes and listened, allowing the ocean to pour its truth into him. He heard tales of storms born in silence, of rivers carving destinies across forgotten lands. He heard of mortal hearts, their courage and folly, both etched into the sea's memory. The whispering depths spoke not to frighten, but to remind of balance and consequence. For every choice cast upon the sea, a ripple followed, touching shores unseen. The naiads who had followed bowed their heads, their songs hushed into wordless hums. Even the gulls above circled in silence, unwilling to break the sanctity below. The chariot floated steady, suspended between the light above and shadows beneath. The sea seemed endless, a mirror of eternity where time itself lost meaning. Poseidon's crown gleamed faintly, reflecting light drawn not from sun, but from the deep. He raised his hand, and the whispers calmed, gathering into one vast voice of truth. It was the voice of the sea itself, ancient and patient, yet unyielding in its will. The words were not words at all, but currents, images, and feelings woven into tide. They spoke of harmony broken and restored, of the cycle that bound all living things. The depths reminded him that power was not possession, but stewardship of balance. For even gods must listen, for even oceans must bow to the rhythm of eternity. The hippocamps stamped once, releasing ripples that shimmered across the quiet sea. The chariot brightened again, its light growing steadier as the whispers began to fade. The voices sank back into shadow, content to have shared their truth with their master. Poseidon bowed his head in respect, acknowledging the gift of the depths. The sea stilled once more, calm and endless, its mysteries veiled, yet its truth remembered. With a flick of the reins, the hippocamps surged forward, eager to leave the solemn hush. The chariot rose, climbing toward brighter waters where sunlight danced again upon the waves. And though the whispering depths vanished behind, their voice remained within Poseidon's heart. For the sea had spoken once more, and its god would carry the weight of its truth. The chariot sailed higher, leaving the hush of the whispering depths behind in solemn grace. The sea brightened, kissed by beams of light that fell like golden threads through crystal waves. Here began the celestial tide, where the sea and sky touched, blending horizon into endless wonder. Clouds drifted low, their bellies silver, reflecting stars not yet risen in the heavens above. The hippocamps pranced eagerly, their hooves sparking droplets that glittered like shards of starlight. The chariot shimmered brighter, its frame outlined in blue fire drawn from ocean's eternal song. Poseidon lifted his gaze, watching the heavens bend downward as though greeting their ocean kin. Every crest of wave mirrored constellations, forming a tapestry of light upon moving waters. It felt as though the sky itself had descended, laying its stars gently upon the sea. The naiads sang once more, their voices weaving with the breeze in soft, celestial harmony. Their song called forth illusions, visions of galaxies reflected within rippling tides of foam. Each note revealed a secret, that the sea and sky were never truly apart. But one. A flock of seabirds flew in patterns, their wings sketching shapes that matched the constellations. Dolphins leapt now with joy again, their arcs tracing stars across the water's mirrored surface. Whales sang deeply, their voices echoing through the tide like bells struck in cosmic rhythm. Every sound, every shimmer, felt like a symphony played by sea, sky, and stars together. Poseidon's heart swelled, his spirit lifted by the reminder of unity binding all creation. For here, no boundary was clear. Sky bled into water. Water climbed toward the heavens. The hippocamps neighed, their manes sparkling as if woven with comets and lunar glow. The chariot soared higher upon a swell, cresting waves that kissed the edge of clouds. Poseidon extended his hand, and the waves reached up, touching his palm like eager kin. The ocean did not roar here. It hummed, like a choir singing the hymn of eternity. The celestial tide whispered of journeys greater than distance, journeys that spanned meaning. It spoke of mortals gazing upward, dreaming of stars, while the sea cradled their longing. It spoke of gods watching from afar, yet bound by the same eternal laws of harmony. Every current moved with precision, aligned to the same rhythm that guided the constellations. Poseidon realized this was no simple crossing. It was a lesson written into the world. The sea was not beneath, the sky not above. They were reflections of each other, like twin mirrors, one infinite, one fluid, both containing the same spark of origin. The naiads danced across waves, their laughter ringing like bells carried upon evening winds. Their forms gleamed translucent, touched by starlight as they celebrated the cosmic union. The hippocamps' steps quickened, lifting the chariot as though it rode upon beams of light. The air shimmered, filled with motes of silver, falling gently like dew across the tide. Poseidon breathed deeply, the salt mingling with fragrance of clouds, sharp yet sweet. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the song of sea and sky entwine within. Visions filled his mind, of stars born in silence, of waves rising to cradle newborn suns. He saw rivers flowing not just across Earth, but through galaxies, weaving patterns eternal. The celestial tide was more than a place. It was a truth painted across creation. It whispered that separation was illusion, that unity was the true current of existence. Poseidon opened his eyes again, light gleaming bright across his crown and steady gaze. The chariot glowed with radiance, drawn now by the strength of sea, sky, and stars. The naiads ceased their song, bowing in reverence as the tide released its final hymn. The hippocamps slowed, hooves still sparking as they descended toward calmer waters ahead. The celestial tide faded softly, blending back into the endless stretch of living sea. Yet its message lingered within Poseidon's heart, a promise etched deeper than stone or wave. He knew the journey still stretched onward, yet already the sea had shared infinite truth. The stars above glimmered brighter, as though nodding in farewell to their ocean reflection. And with that, the chariot pressed forward, carrying Poseidon into the next chapter of wonder. The chariot glided gently now, its pace eased as though the sea itself whispered of rest. The hippocamps breathed steady, their manes no longer fire, but soft streams of silver light. Behind lay wonders untold, depths that whispered, tides that shimmered, and skies that sang. Ahead stretched the familiar expanse, vast and endless, yet touched by newfound meaning. Poseidon stood tall, though his heart carried the weight of all he had seen. The ocean hummed softly, no longer fierce, but tender as a lullaby sung by eternity. He looked upon the waves and saw not power alone, but stories woven into every crest. Each ripple carried a memory, each current a promise, each tide a voice eternal. The naiads gathered close, their song now quiet, like a prayer offered to the sea. They had followed through mystery and wonder, and now they bowed in silent gratitude. The seabirds wheeled above once more, their cries sharp yet joyous against the fading sky. The dolphins danced, breaking the surface with arcs of celebration, heralds of safe return. The whales sang deeper, their notes carrying final echoes of wisdom through the water. The ocean answered them with calm, a mirror of harmony born from the journey. Poseidon touched the reins, and the hippocamps slowed, hooves stirring foam in gentle rhythm. The chariot's glow softened, no longer radiant blaze, but warm lantern guiding homeward. The horizon stretched golden now, kissed by a sun descending into its evening rest. Light shimmered across the surface, a path of fire that seemed to beckon him forward. Poseidon raised his hand once more, offering silent thanks to the sea and sky. For they had spoken, not in thunder, but in whispers and visions of unity. The celestial tide, the whispering depths, the isles of memory, all etched into his soul. He carried them as treasures greater than gems, wisdom far brighter than gold. The sea had reminded him, to rule was not to own, but to serve balance eternal. To command waves was to honor them, to listen as much as to guide. Even gods must bow, even oceans must yield, for harmony is greater than power. The hippocamps snorted, stamping foam as if to echo his unspoken vow. The naiads vanished one by one, fading into waves with smiles soft as dawn. Their song lingered a while longer, then dissolved into the breath of wind. Poseidon watched them go, knowing their gift would remain forever within the tide. The sea grew calm, vast and endless, as though cradling him in eternal embrace. He lowered his trident, letting its tip touch the water, a gesture of reverence. The waves bowed gently, rippling outward like a circle of eternal acknowledgement. The sky deepened now, stars awakening to watch the chariot's final stretch. They twinkled above like friends, guardians of the truths shared upon this voyage. Poseidon smiled faintly, the weight of solemnity balanced by the lightness of peace. The chariot turned toward his palace of coral, pearl, and shimmering crystal spires. Its towers gleamed faintly in the distance, awaiting their sovereign's return in silence. The hippocamps pulled steady, eager yet calm, guided by his steady hand. The ocean sang one last hymn, a low hum echoing through currents and depths. It was a hymn of closure, of journeys completed, of stories carried into forever. The whales sang once more, a final blessing before diving deep into shadowed waters. The gulls cried farewell, their wings gilded by the last rays of sun. Even the winds joined, sighing softly across the surface like voices of kin. Poseidon breathed deep, inhaling salt and starlight, his heart steady as the tide. He had journeyed far, yet what he carried was not distance, but wisdom eternal. The chariot slowed to rest, waves cradling it as though welcoming their god home. And in that moment, the sea fell silent, content in its eternal truth. The The journey of waves had ended, yet its song would echo forever in the world. For the ocean had spoken, and its God had listened, carrying harmony within his reign. The chariot of waves gleamed one last time, before sinking gently into the arms of the sea. And so the story closed, not with thunder, but with the soft whisper of eternity.